Juice Wells looks like he might be all the way back, and Chris Kiffin is joining the staff this season. We'll tell you what we learned. This is the Locked On Ole Miss Podcast.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, Rebel fans. I am Steven Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media with Yahoo Sports and a former Ole Miss staff member as well. On today's episode, we're diving into that final tune-up before the Furman Paladins. A photo from the latest scrimmage shows Juice Wells as a featured participant, which is a great sign that his black jersey during fall camp was more precautionary than anything serious. That is a huge relief for all Ole Miss Rebel fans. Also, breaking news from Chris Lowe at ESPN. Chris Kiffin, Lane Kiffin's brother, is joining the staff as an analyst role. This is a massive get for the program, and adds another layer of expertise to this coaching lineup. Thanks for tuning in, and as always, hotty toddy. This is the Locked On Ole Miss Podcast, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. We're free and available on all the podcast apps and on YouTube. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day, and a special hello to the insiders and everydayers who make the show what it is. And don't forget to find a second listen on the network. Chris Gordy at Locked On SEC, Corey Burton at Locked On Vandy, even Zach Blackerby at Locked On Auburn. They provide different perspectives on college football, the SEC, and Ole Miss, so check it out. Ultimate College Football HC is a brand new mobile game that is completely free, has no ads, and is 100% playable offline. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCFB in all caps, all one word, to get inside the game store to receive a free boost to your program. Begin your coaching legacy today. So this weekend was the mock game for Ole Miss. And the mock game, I've said this many times, and anybody that listens to my program knows, a mock game is more about the things that's other than the football on the field. The players are playing, everything's going on, but they're going up against the service team in the mock game. It's not best on best. It's not anything like that, but it's designed so you're going to have 11 people on the punt team. You're going to make sure your substitution patterns. You're going to make sure how everything works. The press box are going to be set up to communicate up and down on. You know exactly where the coach is going to be. You get to have a dry run and a dress rehearsal over all of your operational stuff on game day. That's what a mock game is for. But if you're not able to play, they don't play you. You do not dress out. If you are severely injured or limited, they will not send you out there to even run around a little bit. So the photo that came out of Juice Wells from the mock game in a normal jersey playing football with what looks to be the starting unit on the field, because you can see Ulysses Bentley and Jeremy James behind him. You have to figure that Juice Wells is at least trending towards playing a fairly decent sized role against the Furman Paladins. I mean, it's nothing outside the realm of possibility. I've said over the course of this whole season, or an off season, that Juice Wells, they were going to be careful with what they're doing. And Lane Kiffin doing the very NFL kinder, gentler fall camp and all of that. They do load management. They just put them in a black no contact jersey, but it's load management. And that doesn't mean necessarily they're hurt. That could mean they're hurt. And a lot of people run with the fact that they're hurt, but a lot of times they're doing load management and they're just trying to keep hits off of players' bodies, especially with a potential 15 to 16 game season coming down the pike. Juice Wells in the practice, I'm expecting him to at least have a big role on the weekend. Juice Wells, when he was in South Carolina in 2022, this is just a reminder to everybody. When the 2023 season started, he was the Luther Burden of that season. Whenever he was the it guy that everybody was talking about. He had 68 catches, 928 yards, and 6 touchdowns in 2022 at South Carolina. He got famously injured. He ended up not being able to come back. He had surgery when he got to Ole Miss, but South Carolina fans are upset for some reason that he got injured. It happens. Whenever you pay money for people and they get injured, it might be a little bit difficult for you. But Antoine Juice Wells is going to be a major cog potentially for Jackson Dart and a potential major cog for Trey Harris as well. With them coming back, that opens up the wide receiver position in a big way. And in the slot, we'll see exactly how it looks. I think Antoine Juice Wells, he has the ability to play on the outside. We saw him. He's a big dude. He's a really big dude. But he can also do some of the higher leveraged Elijah Moore type stuff that Ole Miss did during the 2020 season. That is possible as well. So we'll see exactly how that goes. But Antoine Juice Wells looking like he's on track to play against the Furman Paladins. Now, whenever Lane Kiffin is asked about it today at the press conference, he's not going to comment on it. He doesn't comment on injuries one way or another. He's just going to say, we hope that he can play. That's all he's going to do. But the fact that Ole Miss put him on Twitter, on Instagram as a featured participant of the mock game, let you know it kind of where their head's at. Now, the other bit of news that came out of the weekend was the brother of Lane Kiffin, Chris Kiffin, who was a graduate assistant, I believe, whenever I was at Ole Miss. He was a defensive graduate assistant, is coming back in an analyst role at Ole Miss for this football season. And this is just another coach added to already one of the better coaching staffs in all of college football. If you just look at what they have on defense and Zach Arnett and now Chris Kiffin and Lou Spano and all of those guys on that side of the ball, they've got a heck of a defensive committee working. They've also hired offensive coaches like Joe Judge and all of that as well. But they have set themselves up to be in a really good spot. Now, remember, the rules changed in college football. Analysts can coach on the sideline. Analysts can do everything except recruit. And by recruit, I mean go on the road recruiting, which nobody wants to do in this era of college football. Chris Kiffin is the perfect role for him. This is an NFL defensive line coach the last 4 years that is going to help Randall Joyner, who is a star on the defensive line coaches in his own right, playing in front of the defensive coordinator, Pete Golding, who is a defensive line whisperer and somebody that knows how to use the defensive line, who has an assistant linebacker coach in Zach Arnett, who is playing in front of Brian Brown. The analyst and coaching, there's a nice complement that is developing on the Ole Miss coaching staff. It's really interesting stuff, and I think this is an excellent fit. Ole Miss is completely all in this season. It doesn't matter. And everybody's going to say, hey, you see the games this weekend? You can't take everyone for granted or anyone for granted. Yeah, that's a bunch of bunk. Florida State lost their quarterback. Whoever loses their quarterback, you can't have expectations. It doesn't matter who the next quarterback is. You need to have the expectation that you're going in with a new quarterback. Jackson Dart is a year 3 starter. It is not in any way synonymous with what happened to Florida State over the weekend, which, by the way, your boy here called this. He said it. If you want to go back and listen to the podcast earlier in the week, take Georgia Tech and the under, Georgia Tech to cover, and Georgia Tech to win outright, and every one of those hit. And I honestly feel pretty good about that. And we're going to talk about that week 0 in just a second, because I'm going to be honest, okay? Up next on the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, the Rebels were the talk of college football this weekend. What has everyone buzzing about Ole Miss? Stick around and find out. Hey, Locked On Ole Miss fans, I want to take a moment to give you a heads up on a brand new mobile game that I think you're going to love as much as I do. It's called Ultimate College Football HC. In this amazing game and simulation, you get to step into the shoes of a head coach and lead your college football program to glory. Can you imagine actually being the head coach of Ole Miss? From recruiting players to hiring staff to overseeing training camps or handling school scholarships, you control every crucial detail of your program. It's all in your hands. Will you be able to handle the pressure? Ultimate College Football HC is completely free, has no ads, and is 100% playable offline. You can play as you go, as you want, and when you want to play. And of course, we have a special offer for the Locked On Ole Miss fans out there. Use promo code LOCKEDONCFB. That's all one word, all caps, inside the game store and receive a free boost to your program. Make sure to take advantage of this perk as your team will get off to a strong start. So download the game. Just visit ultimate-cfb.com or look it up on the App Store as well. Ultimate College Football HC, begin your coaching legacy today. Thank you for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen of the day. For your second one, enjoy the Locked On Ole Miss, or Locked On College Football podcast with Spencer McLaughlin. He gets you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron with discussion on the upcoming season and the ever-changing landscape of college athletics, including realignment, the transfer portal, NIL, new college footballs, expanded playoffs, and even more. Locked On College Football is available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Really interesting stuff. This week 0, Saturday was probably the best day that I had as an Ole Miss fan where Ole Miss didn't have a game. The only way that Saturday could have been better is if Ole Miss played and Ole Miss got a win against an Alabama or a Georgia or something like that. That is the only way it could have been better, because to a person almost, and I will say almost, on Fox and ESPN and CBS, Ole Miss was the talk of college football on Saturday. When you look at Nick Saban, who's the GOAT, everybody knows Nick Saban's the GOAT. He's doing his weekly Pat McAfee hit. He's on game day. And he said that Ole Miss is going to be good. They're going to look like a big-time program up front in the SEC. They can match up with anybody on the outside, and Lane is one of the best play callers in the country. Nick Saban is extremely bullish on what Ole Miss can do this season. You look at Bruce Feldman from Fox Sports, over on Fox, where they have no ties to the Southeastern Conference, called Ole Miss his dark horse pick to win the entire national championship. Really interesting stuff. Everybody to a T, well, almost everybody. Kirk Herbstreit was the only one that did not put Ole Miss in his playoff rankings. He has Ole Miss as like the second team out. He obviously thinks more highly of Missouri than Ole Miss. I don't agree with it, but it is a perspective and it's worth bringing up. But for the most part, everybody, it was a love fest on the Ole Miss Rebels. Now, some of the comments were couched a little bit to where you had things like Pat McAfee saying, if not now, when? You know, all of those qualifiers going into it. He had Ole Miss as his number 5 seed in the college football playoff. Desmond Howard had Ole Miss in. Heck, I think even Seamus probably had Ole Miss in as well. But it was a very good day for Ole Miss football, and it was very good on the fact that the games were awesome as well. Georgia Tech looked legit, and Florida State did not. I think Florida State looks like an 8-4 team. They cannot throw the ball downfield. I knew that losing Johnny Wilson and losing Keon Coleman and Jordan Travis, you just weren't going to bounce back. And then when you take Flying East with all of these unknowns, because Flying East is always a problem, the under was guaranteed, and their offense was going to struggle, and Georgia Tech's defense got some help. Their offense can score points. And next thing you know, Georgia Tech just was completely dominating the line of scrimmage. Montana State did not cover my New Mexico pick from last week to cover. That worked out. But Montana State was able to win the game in dramatic fashion at the end. And SMU dodged a major bullet to Nevada, a major bullet to where the ACC almost just had the worst week 0 in the history of week 0s. It was terrible for them. But Georgia Tech or SMU was able to get a touchdown at the end to win the game. It's very sad. A kid dropping a kickoff return after he called a fair catch and picking it up at the 1-yard line. SMU ended up getting a safety that completely turned the game around. And at that point, SMU kind of woke up. It was an excellent week 0. I did not watch the Hawaii game. I didn't watch any of the other games. Those were kind of my 3 broadcasts. It was excellent because everywhere you look, they were talking about Ole Miss. They were looking at that. And as an Ole Miss fan that has been an Ole Miss fan my whole life, and I am pushing 50 years old right now, never has a day happened like today, to where Ole Miss was the talk of complete college football, to where Ole Miss was ready to ascend. The national pundits and everything, the people that want to be the smartest person in the room, they're taking Ole Miss. They want to be the one that said, I was on Ole Miss before they made their run. Because you look at Ole Miss having the most Senior Bowl watch list players, even more than the Georgia Bulldogs. When you look at all the players that they have draftable grades from the Blue-Gray Shrine, or not the Blue-Gray Shrine game, the East-West Shrine game. Sorry about that. When you look at all of that, you see the talent there. We've gone over the coaching staff in the first segment. This completely built. Ole Miss has probably sold out every SEC game by now. There was less than 100 tickets for the Mississippi State game, and it was the last one, and that was on Friday. They've probably sold out that a good bit. Ole Miss is in a better shape than it's ever been. It took them 50 years to wipe off the 70s and the 80s. The hole that was dug for Ole Miss football in those 2 decades. They finally got it all off and returned to potential glory, to at least the point where everybody is ready to anoint them. Now, Ole Miss still has to win football games. I'm not expecting anything crazy to happen over the first 4 weeks. If it does, it's a completely different conversation. But as it comes, if everything goes the way it should go, just chalk. I'm just saying nothing happens. Ole Miss plays clean, wins the game. Ole Miss is going to go to Baton Rouge as the number 2 or number 3 ranked team in the entire country. Just the way it works. Georgia plays Texas fairly early on. Ole Miss going down there and having a chance to win that game, which will be probably the biggest football game that Ole Miss has played at that point since 1969 or 70, something like that. I mean, as far as the stakes of what's going to be on the line, that's going to be a massive type situation. So we'll see. Ole Miss has to do it on the field. We talked to John Forcade, who is going to be on the Monday after games this season. We'll have John Forcade on talking about what's going on. I love talking to John because he says what he thinks. And we love perspectives. And the last thing you want is the perspective of somebody that's afraid of retribution from saying something negative or something weird. I want to hear that perspective, even whether or not I agree with it. John Forcade provides that in abundance, and I am so fired up. We're going to have Zach Mareth later on today. Tuesday night, we're going to debut our live stream. It'll be time for that. We're going to have Brad and Logan potentially Dalen Flowers, potentially some of the regulars stopping by. On Wednesday, Michael Katz will be on the show. Thursday will be an SEC preview that we take part in and film on Tuesday nights. It'll be put on the timeline on Thursday. Friday will be Tom Vanderford. Saturday will be John Macon Gillespie in a pregame show. And then immediately after the game, we will be doing a postgame show as well. Lots of fun stuff. I am so fired up that it's game week. I'm so fired up that I can use a What We Learned thumbnail. I'm so fired up for tomorrow having Keys versus Furman. I'm so fired up about all of that. It's game week. Ever since the clock hit zeros against the Penn State Nittany Lions, we have been willing this week to happen, and it's finally here. Coming up next, we're diving into the SEC Week 1 lines. What are the odds makers saying? And what can you expect as Ole Miss kicks off the season? Stay tuned. Grab a 5-hour energy shot to stay alert and watch all your favorite games. I watch from noon to midnight every Saturday. And sometimes that can kind of zap the energy. But if you just did that, or if you stayed up late to see that intense overtime game, take a 5-hour energy shot in the morning so you can start your day. 5-hour energy is the brand hardworking people like you have trusted for over 20 years to give them the alert, energized feeling they need to get through a busy, hectic day. You'll always know where to find 5-hour energy shots right at the cash register at nearly every convenience, drug, or grocery store nationwide. Stock up on money-saving multi-packs to make sure you never run out of delicious, energizing 5-hour energy shots. If you go to 5hourenergy.com, that's the number 5hourenergy.com, and get some 5-hour energy product today. You can use my promo code LOCKEDONCFB, all one word, to get 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. So really interesting stuff. This is the first time we've actually got to do lines, and I'm pretty fired up about where it sits. Week one's lines. You like my graphic? I did this. Yeah, I built all of this. I built stuff for SEC After Dark and all of that as well. Arkansas Pine Bluff is at Arkansas. Arkansas is a 49.5-point favorite. These FCS versus FBS games are always interesting. I know that Bobby Petrino is at Arkansas now. They're going to score points. They're going to be more offensive than they have been recently, but I don't know that 49.5 points, that isn't a bridge too far. Now, I do not know how bad Arkansas Pine Bluff is, but Arkansas needing to get off on the good foot. Sam Pittman on the hot seat, bringing Bobby Petrino back. I do see how this could be a 59-3, a 56-3 type ball game. We'll see exactly how that goes, but I do know that is a lot of points. Murray State is at Missouri. Missouri is a 46.5-point favorite over the Racers. This is the same situations. Once you get up with lines in the upper 40s, it gets difficult. Even though Murray State's an FCS program, it all depends on Missouri's ability to run up the score, because that's where it sits at the moment. I do think that Missouri is going to have a good team. They're going to miss Cody Schrader, but they do have Luther Burden, and Brady Cook is ready for a breakout type season. They lost their defensive coordinator. The question is, can Murray State score 10 points? If Murray State can score 10 points, I doubt Missouri's ability to score 56 or 57. So we'll see exactly how that goes, but that's a large line. Speaking of large lines, Temple is at Oklahoma. This is the first time we've talked about Oklahoma in an SEC game. Oklahoma is favored by 43.5 points over the Owls. You know, it's always a difficult thing going into Norman. They're going to be jacked up. That place is going to be energized. This is a situation where I do like the Oklahoma line. Seth Luttrell calling offensive plays. Jackson Arnold's debut as a regular season starting quarterback, and Brent Venables' defense is going to be really good. That's what I know about Oklahoma, and they have a lot of talent on the field. I do not know much about the Temple Owls. Just kind of is what it is. Clemson is at Georgia. Georgia has essentially all top 100 type players on defense. Clemson has Cade Klubnik. Klubnik has a pretty good defense as well. Georgia has Carson Beck. If you told me that Georgia won this game 31-14, 31-10, I would believe you. But 13.5 points, that might be kind of an underrating of the Georgia Bulldogs. This is the most talented football team in the entire country. Game of the day, potentially. Virginia Tech is favored by 13.5 points at Vanderbilt. Yes, everybody snicker about what's going on, but Vandy is going to play slow. They have some talent, and they have some winners on their team. I do not know that Virginia Tech is going to be good to win enough to win that game by 13.5 points. I want to see Vandy if they've made the improvements that I think they have. We'll see how that goes. Chattanooga is at Tennessee. Tennessee is favored by 38.5 points. Typical FCS game. I like that line, honestly, for Tennessee in that game. I think the Vols are going to score. That's Nico's debut in the regular season, so we can see what happens. Colorado State is at Texas. This is Texas's first time on the program in an SEC game. They're favored by 33.5 points. We'll see if a lack of a running game essentially affects the Texas Longhorns in this early season. I think Texas is going to be really good. I do not know that Colorado State is going to be able to score, which the question then becomes, can Texas score 35 points? But that's what it is. Can they score 5 touchdowns in a football game? If they can, they're going to cover. Miami is at Florida. Miami's favored by 2.5 points. Listen, Florida's schedule that we talked about during the whole offseason being what it was, it's changed now. After Florida State did what they did in Dublin, it's changed. If they can get this one and get that one, instead of 4 wins, they might be bowl game eligible, and maybe Phil Steele was right. Miami's at 2.5 point favorite. You know, Mario Cristobal does something stupid in clock management seemingly every season. Miami's a good football team. They have Damian Martinez and they have Cam Ward at quarterback. Miami's going to be able to play some ball as well. Moving on, Old Dominion is a 20.5 point underdog at South Carolina. It's a game where if South Carolina shows up, they should be all right with their quarterback. This is going to be a big game to get his feet wet and everything to work out. Eastern Kentucky is at Mississippi State. Mississippi State is a 26.5 point favorite over the Eastern Kentucky Colonels. That's a situation. There's not enough starters coming back. That I do not know how to get a read on Mississippi State and what type of team they are. We'll see exactly what happens there. Western Kentucky at Alabama. Bama is favored by 30.5 points. This is another situation. I do not know. Bama should be good, but we'll see. Furman's at Ole Miss. Ole Miss favored by 42.5 points. Just like I talked about in the early one, anytime the line goes over 40 points, you get wary and you worry about too many points. But Ole Miss should dispatch of the Furman Paladins pretty easily. Notre Dame in the game potentially of the day is a 2.5 point underdog at Texas A&M in Kyle Field. If Notre Dame loses this game, they're probably not going to go to the playoff. If Texas A&M wins this game, their hopes are alive of what can happen. This is a big football game. College game day is there as well. Alabama A&M is at Auburn. Auburn is favored by 47.5 points. Hugh Freeze, to my knowledge, is still the football coach in Auburn. That is a lot of points, but it is a SWAC type school. So we'll see if the Auburn Tigers are able to run it up against them. Southern Miss is a 27.5 point underdog against the Kentucky Wildcats. Mississippi State played Eastern Kentucky. Southern Miss is at Kentucky. Is kind of the Mississippi-Kentucky challenge this weekend. We'll see. Southern Miss, on certain years, they can jump up and get you. On certain years, you can just beat them down. I have no read on that or no idea of how it can go. I think Tater Rodemaker is going to be the starting quarterback for Southern Miss. Brock Vandegrift is going to be the starting quarterback for Kentucky. And USC at LSU. LSU is a 4.5 point favorite over USC. This line has gone down like 2 points as it's gotten a little bit closer. Neither one of these teams played defense a year ago. Nobody has a real read on what's going to happen. This should be a lot of fun on Labor Day night in Vegas. Should be a lot of fun indeed. I'm pretty fired up about what can happen. And if you look at Ole Miss, again, 42.5 point favorite. The over-under in this game is at 60.5 points. And, of course, all betting lines come courtesy of FanDuel Sports. So, pretty cool indeed. I do want to thank everybody for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your go-to source for Ole Miss sports. You know, we pride ourselves on offering the most comprehensive perspectives, which is why we're the #1 Ole Miss podcast out there. Your support means the world to us. For your second listen of the day, check out Locked On College Football podcast. Spencer McLaughlin will get you hyped for an exciting season with in-depth discussions on the upcoming games and the ever-evolving landscape of college athletics. Spencer covers it all. You can find Locked On College Football on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And also exciting news. You can now become a Locked On Ole Miss Insider, the best and easiest way to stay updated on all things Ole Miss sports. It's a texting program. We send out notifications anytime anything relevant happens without all of the hassle of message boards filled with trolls. Enjoy a 14-day free trial and experience the future of college sports coverage. We're adding new perks as we grow, so don't miss out. The link is down in the description. For those watching on YouTube, we will send you to Locked On College Sports right now. It's game week, finally. We made it. Should be a great week. Hotty toddy, everyone.